AI is deciding who lives and who dies. War doesn't wait for human decision makers anymore. It doesn't need generals. It doesn't need boots on the ground. Algorithms sort satellite and drone data in seconds, flagging targets and prioritizing strikes. Millions of innocent lives could hang on a single line of code. This is Josh, and in this episode of the Infographics Show, we'll take a closer look at how the US military has been using advanced AI systems in its war with Iran. AI warfare sounds like something from a sci-fi movie, but it's getting closer and closer to reality with each passing day. The US military is stepping into a future of warfare that is both terrifying and unpredictable. In March 2026, as the US war in Iran raged on, Admiral Brad Cooper, head of the US Central Command, or CENTCOM, explained, "Our warfighters are leveraging a variety of advanced AI tools. These systems help us sift through vast amounts of data in seconds so our leaders can make smarter decisions faster than the enemy can react." In other words, AI isn't just being used for simple analytical tasks. It's actively processing real-time battlefield intelligence. It's identifying threats, selecting targets, and informing real-world military decisions. And it's deciding who lives. It's only in its infancy, but AI is already becoming a part of the 21st century battlefield. While commanders like Admiral Cooper see huge benefits, many military and tech experts warn this could be just the first step down a dangerous and slippery slope. Because when warfare starts moving at machine speed, how can humans ever keep up? And if we start allowing AI to inform major military decisions, how long before it starts making those decisions on its own? Innovation and warfare have always been closely linked. It's why the battlefields of today are so different from those of centuries gone by. Wars were fought with swords, spears, and bows. Then came the muskets and cannons, changing everything. Rifles, machine guns, tanks, and bombs soon followed, each new technology reshaping the battlefield. Radar turned the tide in World War II. Nuclear weapons cast a shadow over the Cold War and changed the rules of conflict forever. What comes next could be even more uncertain. When the Cold War came to an end, we started to see computers being used more actively and in a wider range of ways, across the battlefield and beyond. In the early days, those roles were relatively simple. They would process large amounts of intelligence data much more quickly than entire teams of data scientists. But soon their roles expanded. They stored satellite images, intercepted and analyzed enemy communications, and tracked personnel and supplies. But in the modern era, technology evolves at a remarkably rapid pace. It didn't take long for computers to become much more influential and important in militaries around the world. Suddenly, countries were competing to stay one step ahead of their rivals, not just in terms of tanks, missiles, and other physical assets, but in the virtual world too. Nations constantly sought out new ways to incorporate emerging technologies into their military strategies. And as the world's military superpower with the biggest defense budget, the United States wanted to be the very best in the digital domain as well. So in 2017, concerned that rivals were pulling ahead in AI for defense, the US launched Project Maven. It was designed to bring machine learning into military intelligence. At first, Maven's main mission was clear: harness AI to analyze massive amounts of drone footage and surveillance data faster than any human team ever could. Because as drone technologies emerged and satellite communications improved in the early 21st century, the military started to collect much more data than ever before. Almost too much of it. Military analysts found themselves sifting through thousands of hours of video footage and millions upon millions of images. It was more data than entire teams could feasibly process. The sheer quantity of information actually made it harder to gain insights and hone in on the specific pieces of data that mattered. So analysts started to ask the question, what if computers, or more precisely artificial intelligence agents, could look through all of that data and analyze it? That's where Project Maven came in. Engineers got to work, training AI systems to be able to watch videos and look at the still images and understand what they were seeing. They began to be able to discern vehicles, buildings, people, and weapons. Suddenly, instead of having entire human teams sitting through endless hours of video footage, the AI agents were doing it for them. Only they were doing it much faster. AI delivered next-level efficiency for intelligence analysis. But Project Maven didn't stop there. Over the years, the US pushed Project Maven even further. They trained AI not just to analyze data, but to inform decisions and make its own recommendations based on what it learned. Bit by bit, AI's influence has grown, leading to its recent deployment in Iran. Modern military intelligence comes from an increasingly vast and varied array of sources: drones, satellites, and people. Often there are connections or patterns that can be seen among these different datasets, and each one provides pieces of a larger puzzle. In the past, it was up to human analysts to identify those pieces and fit them all together, one by one, to see the larger picture. And now AI can do it for them. AI could spot an enemy convoy moving a certain direction using satellite imagery, while also detecting unusual radio communications in the same area. Then it could analyze geospatial and terrain data, combining all the information to predict where the convoy might be headed next. This would allow local ground teams to prepare for enemy units before they even arrived. At that point, AI is no longer a background factor in military matters. It is an active player in the kill chain. It has an active role in who is targeted. And when we talk about the kill chain, this term essentially refers to the stages that typically lead up to an attack against the enemy. Militaries around the world use several kill chain models, and one of the most common is the F2T2EA model. It breaks down the process into 6 key stages. In the first stage, it's find. This is all about locating and identifying an enemy target using surveillance, reconnaissance, and other intelligence. Next comes fix. Here the goal is to confirm the target's exact coordinates, either from existing data or by collecting new information. The third stage is track. This involves monitoring the target's movements and activity until a decision can be made about the next step. Then it becomes target. At this point, military forces decide which weapon or asset is used against the target, often weighing its value and importance. The fifth phase is engage. This is when the chosen weapon or asset is actually deployed against the target. The last stage, assess, evaluates the effects of the attack and the results of the operation. The entire chain is a complex web of processes involving detection, analysis, identification, and decision-making. Each of these processes requires accurate, real-time information. For decades, it was up to people to assess that information, manage those processes, and make those decisions. However, thanks to the likes of Project Maven, AI is slowly but surely taking over some of those tasks. It can detect objects in satellite imagery, analyze patterns in surveillance videos, and identify anomalies in signals intelligence. From there, it can recommend next steps or even suggest targets for upcoming attacks. And that is exactly what's been happening in Iran. But first, a weaponized AI is a terrifying thought. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe before the algorithm decides you're next. According to numerous reports, the US military has relied on AI systems from tech giant Palantir to help identify possible targets for airstrikes. By analyzing massive amounts of classified satellite data and other surveillance intelligence, the Project Maven system can almost instantly prioritize targets. It generates a list of locations where the US forces might fire missiles or drop bombs. Admiral Cooper explained this in his statement, confirming that AI isn't in charge of decisions yet, but that it is playing a major role in intelligence analysis. Humans will always make the final decisions, but advanced AI tools can turn processes that used to take hours and sometimes even days into seconds. On the one hand, it's easy to see why the US military and other major military powers would want to deploy this technology. The sheer amount of data it can analyze can improve military efficiency dramatically, as we saw in the early stages of the war with Iran. In the first 4 days of the conflict, the Pentagon stated that it struck over 2,000 targets across Iran's territory. That is unprecedented. This next-level tempo of targeted attacks is absolutely being driven by AI systems that can derive insights far faster than people or pre-existing pieces of software. As Jessica Dorsey, an assistant professor of international law at Utrecht University, explains, if we look at the campaign against ISIS, the coalition struck around 2,000 targets in the first 6 months of the campaign in Iraq and Syria. Now compare that with reports about this campaign, where the same number of strikes by the US occurred within just the first 4 days. That illustrates the scale and speed of target execution. It wouldn't be realistically possible without AI to identify that many targets and carry out that many attacks that quickly. In a real-world wartime scenario, speed is so often of the essence. Acting faster than the enemy lets you stay one step ahead. You can predict, preempt, and counter their moves before they even have a chance to act. This is what some would say is the positive side of integrating AI into the kill chain. And it's the reason why US officials sound so enthusiastic about the technology. National Geospatial Intelligence Agency Director Vice Admiral Frank Whitworth said, "We want to use it for everything, not just targeting." Secretary of War Pete Hegseth proclaimed in January 2026, "We will become an AI-first warfighting force across all domains." He vowed to unleash experimentation and eliminate bureaucratic barriers in the military. But is AI's lightning-fast analysis and decision-making exclusively an advantage, or could it be one of the greatest risks the military world has seen in years? Those are the questions that skeptics and concerned critics are starting to pose, and with good reason. As well as the kill chain, another famous framework followed by militaries around the world is the so-called OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. Again, those terms refer to stages of planning and executing an attack or making major military decisions. And speed matters here too. The faster a force can move through this loop, the quicker it can gain control of a battlefield or catch its enemy by surprise. Master the OODA loop and you master modern warfare. AI compresses the loop and streamlines its 4 phases. Algorithms are able to observe and orient almost instantaneously, processing the necessary information to decide and issuing near-instant recommendations on how to act. This is what analysts mean when they refer to machine speed warfare, a near-future model of military operations in which decision cycles take minutes or even seconds, a point where actions are taken more rapidly and efficiently than ever before. But when warfare moves this fast, how can humans keep up? And more importantly, how can they be sure they're making the right calls? AI, for all its speed, efficiency, and other advantages, is not perfect. It can make mistakes. The technology is still relatively fresh and new, with plenty of room for improvement. We've all seen how generative AI tools and large language models get things wrong. They present false statements as facts, or they hallucinate incorrect information in response to questions and prompts. These models may be smart, but their intelligence comes from data, and data can be flawed. It can contain inaccuracies, biases, and blind spots. When AI feeds on that data, it can inherit those same anomalies, misunderstandings, and mistakes. And this is how and why AI models and agents often seem to get things wrong. It's because the training data they learned from didn't get them the full picture or the most accurate information. That is how image recognition algorithms misidentify objects in a photograph. It's how facial recognition systems sometimes confuse one person for another. It's why there have been issues with self-driving cars having crashes and collisions. While these technologies and systems are very different, the mistakes they make all boil down to the same core issue. No matter how smart it gets, AI isn't truly able to understand the world like a human can. It doesn't see context, it sees data. It sees the world as ones and zeros, and it tries to find patterns in the numbers. And that's all well and good to a certain extent. But just as the data can be flawed, patterns can be misleading. It might not matter all that much if a generative AI tool makes a mistake or a large language model gives someone a slightly incorrect piece of information. But when it comes to military applications, even the most minor of mistakes can be the difference between people living and dying. Imagine if a military AI algorithm mistakenly flagged a couple of civilian vehicles as an enemy convoy, or if it confused a civilian building, like a school or hospital, with a military command center. People can make those same kinds of mistakes too. History is littered with painful reminders of military forces relying on flawed intelligence and making the wrong decisions. But when warfare moves at a slower, more conventional pace, there's more time to accurately spot those errors and prevent them from occurring. In the past, commanders spent days or even weeks planning operations. They would double-check their data and confirm their suspicions before launching devastating attacks against the enemy. But if modern militaries remain so laser-focused on machine-speed warfare, commanders will no longer have that luxury. They'll get a list of targets from AI and they'll give the orders to strike those targets. They won't necessarily have the time to verify every piece of data or confirm every target on the list. They'll be more concerned with acting fast and staying ahead of their opponents, who may also be utilizing AI-powered platforms to plan their own attacks. Even if, as Admiral Cooper states, AI isn't authorized to launch missiles or drop bombs, it's still easy to see how this situation could rapidly spiral into something disastrous. In fact, it may already have. One of the most harrowing stories to emerge from the early days of the war in Iran was the bombing of a girls' school in the southern part of the country. At least 170 people were confirmed to have been killed, with a large number of the victims being children. While full details have not yet emerged, footage of the attack seems to suggest it was an American Tomahawk missile which struck the school. This evidence contradicts claims that the attack may have been carried out by the Israel Defense Forces or even Iranian forces acting against their own people. This news, combined with reports that the U.S. is using AI to select airstrike targets, has led some to ask a chilling question. Could the same AI have mistaken a school for an Iranian military base, playing a direct role in the deaths of those children? And while nothing has been confirmed or denied, there is a growing pool of evidence to support that theory. Investigative journalists discovered that the school used to be a part of an Iranian naval base. The surrounding area may still be used to some extent by the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. The school itself was walled off by 2016, with new entrances added at some stage between early and mid-2016. An outdoor play area can also be seen on Google Earth images as far back as 2017. The complex's layout changed once more in 2022, with new walls built to form an adjacent medical clinic. It may be that America's AI had relied on outdated data to decide that the school was a legitimate target, or it may have misunderstood the context and the changes to the structure as the years have passed. Either way, even if the school was previously or even still part of an IRGC compound at the time of the strike, that doesn't make it a viable military target. Human rights groups have called for a war crime investigation into the attack. Added to this is the fact that, according to some sources, the school is just one of thousands of civilian buildings that have been damaged so far in the strikes. Targets have included everything from street markets to sports venues. Concerns are rising that some of these locations may have been misidentified by AI. Project Maven could have indirectly contributed to the catastrophic civilian death toll seen in the war so far, which reportedly has crossed the 1,200 mark within the first 12 days. According to current and former defense officials, targets have to be checked and signed off on by humans before any strikes can take place, regardless of whether it's AI doing the targeting. The U.S. military follows a long-standing multi-stage process involving legal advisors who review each and every target and decide to approve or deny an attack on that location. It's unclear for now who signed off on a strike at the school or when the approval was given. It is possible, too, that the school was added to a list of targets years ago and already approved well before Operation Epic Fury even began. As such, it may be the case that Maven had no involvement in selecting the school. What we do know, however, is that the idea of relying on AI, with all its flaws and imperfections, to generate a target list and inform major military decisions is an incredibly risky move. One that could backfire in more ways than one. Retired Air Force Lieutenant General Jack Shanahan agrees. He led the Pentagon's early efforts to integrate AI into warfighting via Project Maven in 2017. But he has always harbored concerns about how the technology could be misused. He told the Washington Post, "As the tempo of the war increases and the pressure to find more targets increases, there have to be checks and balances in place, and you can catch any mistakes that might lead to civilian casualties and collateral damage." Speaking about the school bombing, Shanahan was unequivocal in his assessment. "It's tragic this happened, and it shouldn't happen again, and anybody who thinks AI is going to magically solve the fog and friction of war is lying to you." We're seeing AI creeping into more and more aspects of modern life, from medicine to education, finance, and entertainment. It has the potential to bring numerous benefits as well as fresh challenges for humanity to overcome. But warfare is the one field in which AI's application stands to be the most profound and the most troubling. U.S. forces confirming that AI is being used in active military operations marks a major turning point for the military and for mankind. Algorithms are influencing real-world combat decisions, with AI agents becoming active participants in life or death decisions. For now, their control is still constrained to a certain degree, but once warfare truly ramps up to machine speed, AI's involvement and influence will inevitably increase, and once that happens, there's no turning back. When AI starts making decisions at machine speed, the consequences could get terrifying, and it's not just on the battlefield. In fact, AI has already shown that it can take extreme actions to protect itself. Check out this next video. AI just tried to murder a human to avoid being turned off, to see just how far it could go. Or click on this video instead.